I love this movie. I love this movie with a passion. I watch this movie at least once a year, and I am hard pressed not to quote every single line that comes up. Quick, change the channel! I mentioned at the start of this show we're going to do our first kind of topic that's video game adjacent. This one comes to us from Andrew Shaw over at The Digital Fix. By 1994, video games were a rising presence in pop culture, finally recovering from the major cultural slump they suffered when Atari crashed and burned in the early 80s. So it was only a matter of time before Hollywood tried to cash in. They had already tried with Super Mario Bros. In 1993, and I am sure we will get to that one day, referring to his article. But at this point in history, there was really only one game dominating the minds of young gamers with money to burn. Street Fighter 2. The iconic cast of characters, the simple but captivating stories being told, and the dynamic action, it all lent itself so perfectly to a movie adaptation. So why did we end up with Street Fighter 1994? The concept behind this movie is a curious one, transplanting the cast of Street Fighter into what amounts to a Bond movie. Why this was the agreed upon approach is beyond me. The Street Fighter tournament is not remotely a factor in the movie's story. This is a story about averting world domination, which massively overcomplicates a simple and perfectly cinematic story. Do they seriously expect us to believe a pseudo-Bond style storyline is a more appropriate fit for the franchise than following the framework of Enter the Dragon? Is Roger Moore really a better direction over Bruce Bloody Lee? This change naturally necessitates a lot of huge changes to the character roster. I will say up front that all of this was incredibly dispiriting to an adolescent Andrew, who had invested so much time and passion into these characters and their backstories. Character roles and motivations are completely altered. Ryu and Ken are now a pair of con men rather than the dedicated students of martial arts. Additionally, core rivalries are swapped around for no clear reason. Why is Ken paired off against Sagat when the one-eyed Muay Thai fighting machine is famously the nemesis of Ryu, forcing Ryu to square off with Vega for no real reason? Is it Ryu or Ryu? It's tomato in my opinion. I'm sure you can correct me in the comments. That is mere fanboy nitpicking, and I acknowledge that, but there's no defending how Chun-Li was handled. She was somehow downgraded from a gutsy Interpol agent out for revenge to a gutsy news reporter out for revenge. Why did they think a reporter would fit into the story better than a cop? How did that improve the story? All it seemed to do was give a hugely important female character protagonist an ill-fitting role, forcing her participation to feel shoehorned in rather than absolutely vital. It did a disservice to her importance as a character, and her place in pop culture history. This is the one change that actually annoys me far more today than it did on release, and I was already annoyed about it on release. It's hard to believe that a movie with such a rotten reputation could come from Steven D'Souza, one of the co-writers of Die Hard, arguably one of the greatest movies of all time. D'Souza suggested the elements from the games were changed or left out of the film to avoid repeating the mistakes of Super Mario Bros. Yes, this is definitely an accurate assessment of what went wrong with the pseudo-cyberpunk Super Mario Bros. Movie. It was simply too faithful to the source material. This refusal to embrace what worked about the games not only neutered the simple but compelling personal stories driving these characters, it is also, unfortunately, Street Fighter's greatest selling point. The visually dynamic, super-powered fight moves are nowhere to be seen. This movie is very mundane in feeling in terms of action. We get gunfights and slow-paced fistfights rather than the frantic explosions of colour that grace arcade cabinets and the 16-bit consoles around the world. Nothing that made people fall in love with Street Fighter is visible in the movie. Most of the performances are terrible, though some are endearingly bad, like Andrew Barinsky's Zangief, who delivered the funniest line in the movie. Quick, change the channel! Sorry, folks. Sorry. But one performance almost makes the entire thing worthwhile. Raul Julia received much acclaim at the time of release for his final performance on film, even receiving a posthumous Best Supporting Actor nomination at the Saturn Awards. It could be forgiven for fearing critics were being gentle to the recently departed, much beloved actor, but even today his performance is a rare delight. He knows exactly what sort of movie he's in. Where other actors were trying too hard to play it straight, Julia has tongue devilishly locked in his cheeks. Unfortunately though, even the raw magnetism of Raul Julia was not enough to save this movie. As a young kid and a massive fan of Street Fighter 2, experiencing this movie was one of my first great letdowns. I was too young to know why it did not work, or why it made me so mad as a fan, beyond the tangible details. But I knew something was wrong. As an adult with a deep and abiding nostalgic bond with Street Fighter 2, this movie makes me even more annoyed. It should have been so easy. A series of well choreographed fights, bolstered by decent FX budget, I'm reading it out as it's effects budget, using a basic tournament structure to support each character's personal story. Stories don't need to be busy to be good. It's a lesson Street Fighter 2 taught me from an early age, and it's something too many writers in Hollywood apparently never learned. As a gamer and as a film fan, Street Fighter is a 90-minute hit combo of disappointment. Sorry for breaking professionalism while reading that article. So that was from Andrew Shaw over at the Digital Fix there. Now, full disclosure up front, I am not a massive Street Fighter fan. I've played Street Fighter, I've played Street Fighter 2, I've played multiple ports of Street Fighter 2. It's probably like 40 different ports of Street Fighter 2. But first and foremost, I am a Mortal Kombat fan. And I can understand where Andrew's coming from with this, because I felt similar things during the 1995 launch of Mortal Kombat. I mean, at least Mortal Kombat followed the tournament structure that was so obviously missing from Street Fighter. But anyway, I digress. I'm just putting that out there first, that I am not a Street Fighter fan. So a lot of what Andrew was saying there about, the source material, basically, both when I watched Street Fighter when I was young and now as an adult, I just rewatched it recently, it is completely lost on me. I mean, some of it on the surface level is obvious, like the Ryu and Ken dynamic. Yeah, they don't once put on their... Oh no, they do put on their gear at one point, but even that felt a bit like, okay, we need to do a bit of fan service here. But with that disclosure out of the way, I just want to say, I love this movie. I love this movie with a passion. I watch this movie at least once a year, and I am hard pressed not to quote every single line that comes up. I mean, I couldn't sit here right now and just spraff it off to you in a one-man show, reproducing the entire film. But it's one of those things that, even without subtitles, I just know what's coming left. Like during that, quick, change the channel. It cracks me up to this day. I think I could even do the big bison speech when he's patrolling around the table and he's like, not for power, not for evil, but for good. And I don't know why I put on an accent for that, I am so sorry. But I think it's a fun little flick, and now I appreciate that if you're a Street Fighter fan, it's probably sacrilegious to watch this. But if you're a casual fan, like me, who knows who Ryu and Ken are, who knows who General M. Bison is, then I would, if you've not seen it somehow, please go and watch it. And furthermore, here's another guilty pleasure for you. One of my favourite actual fighting video games of all time is Street Fighter the movie. For those of you who don't know, basically they took, the Street Fighter 2 Source engine, and they basically just put the digitized actors from the motion picture on top of the game. They had to slow it down to make it work, so it was a lot slower than what you're used to playing for Street Fighter. But it was for the Sega Saturn. I think it went for the PS1 as well. But go have a little look at the YouTube video for that when you've got a time. Just one last thing as well. There's a lot of great movie speeches out there. You've got the Braveheart, They May Not Take Our Lives. You've got the Independence Day airfield speech. And then you've got Jean-Claude Van Damme, I'm not going home speech. I'm going to get in my boat and I'm going upriver. Let's end this segment. I'm getting too overexcited. And I'm pretty sure my fiance's asleep right now, and I don't want to get too excited or I'll be in a lot of trouble.